your phone.
Lisa, mute button. We're in massive meeting? Really?
The leader has muted your line. To unmute your line, press #6.
Mute your lines. That would help also at the end if people have any questions. This is Roger Erickson, and I've got Jonathan Brazil here as well with our afternoon update on Tropical Storm Barry. Barry is no longer a hurricane. It was literally just a hurricane for probably 2 or 3 hours this morning. But they still have a high-end tropical storm, 65-mile-an-hour winds. We're still talking about the potential for a life-threatening rainfall of 10 to 15 inches with locally higher amounts somewhere in south-central Louisiana tonight into Sunday. Storm surge has been, pretty significant today. Values of 3 to 7 feet across coastal sections of Vermilion, Iberia, St. Mary parishes. That includes the areas of Intercoastal City, Erath, Delcombe, Henry, Sycamore Point, and Burns Point. We've had a lot of reports of damaging winds that will cause scattered and numerous power outages, trees blown down, and damage to homes and businesses. Less coverage probably in southwest Louisiana, but more so in south-central Louisiana. And eventually there'll be a little bit up in central Louisiana as well. I know there's been some reports already out of the Royals of some power outages and trees down up there already. We are looking at possibilities still of isolated power outages over in southeast Texas as well. We haven't had a tornado threat yet, but we'll have to continue to monitor that for the rain bands later on tonight in south-central Louisiana as well as central Louisiana tomorrow. The next graphic basically shows the forecast track. They shifted it just a smidge to the left, basically having it going right now on the edge of Acadia, Lafayette, Vermilion Parish. That's where it's currently located as a 65-mile-an-hour tropical storm, moving it just very slowly to the north-northwest over the next 12 to 18 hours. So by tomorrow morning at 7 o'clock, they have it up in Natchitoches Parish. And then you can see by Sunday evening, they have it up north of, or I should say east of Shreveport. So that's the scenario we got. It will continue to weaken as it moves inland. We don't expect it to be a tropical storm by the time it gets to Alexandria. The threat levels, the highest threat is still the rainfall and flooding, followed by the wind threat and the surge threat and the tornado threat on the lower side. I will note that confidence level is low on the location of the impacts of Barry. This is the latest radar shot. So you notice there's a rain band out west in Texas, kind of lined up west of Beaumont, in Hardin County and whatnot. But the bigger one you can see that's offshore, kind of lining up into portions of Vermilion Parish and maybe Iberia Parish and pointing itself towards Lafayette. So we think this is the beginning of the big rain event. The question mark is, with this forecast going slightly to the left where it was earlier, it's possible that some of these bands of heavy rains could go a little bit further west. So whereas before we've been focusing on Vermilion, Lafayette Parish, St. Martin, Iberia, St. Mary, there's a chance that this could go further west into Jeff Davis, Acadia, maybe even Allen Parish, Evangeline Parish as well, St. Landry Parish. So that's something just to be aware of as we monitor this event through the overnight hours. We'll see where this sets up. A lot of times the thunderstorms get much more active in the nighttime hours as opposed to the daytime hours. This graphic here shows the wind impact. Basically, it's showing you how the storm is expected to weaken as we go through the evening. And you notice up in Alexandria, it does not show the tropical storm force winds, which is indicated by the shade of blue. So, the darker shade there of yellow, that's the threat of the stronger end tropical storm winds, gusts maybe 55 to 65 miles an hour. So that extends maybe up to Oakdale, across probably the southern half of Evangeline Parish, Acadia Parish, portions of St. Landry, including Eunice, all of Lafayette, St. Martin, Vermilion, Iberia, St. Mary. I will say the winds are probably, somewhat favorable for that to be the wind gust as opposed to the sustained winds. And then we're looking at 40 to 50-mile wind gusts across the remainder of southwest Louisiana and maybe a little bit over into southeast Texas. And of course, with all these winds, we're talking about scattered power outages as well as wind damage reports. It may be difficult to see this graphic. These are the wind gusts seen so far today. We had 61 miles an hour down in New Iberia, 55 down near Patterson before the equipment got, I think they lost power down there. 61 miles an hour down at the mouth of the Atchafalaya River. So those are the highest values on here. There's 30-plus mile winds from southwest Louisiana up into central Louisiana. So we got 32 up at Fort Polk, 32 in Alexandria, 38 up in Opelousas, 39 at Lafayette, 33 in Jennings, 34 down in Cameron, 37 down at Sabine Pass. So, those numbers are there. We'll probably see a little bit higher values in most locations through the evening hours. So with that, there's been a lot of power outages, and so this is the CLECO outage map. The shade there right near between New Iberia and ERAF, that's a shade of over 1,000 power outages right there. And of course, big clusters really all the way down the Highway 90 corridor. For Entergy, they got more isolated outages in southeast Texas and southwest Louisiana, and a little bit better coverage now up in Avoyelles, as you can see there, and up to maybe as many as 500, as well as St. Landry, and then higher values in St. Martin, Iberia Parish as well. St. Mary's not covered because that's covered by CLECO, so just to be aware of that. Cameron and Jeff Davis are on here. That's covered by Jeff Davis Electric, and you don't see the Beauregard, Allen, and whatnot. That's the area, and most of Vernon, that's the area that's covered by Beauregard Electric. I will say they don't have a lot of outages so far reported up in that area. The storm surge warning continues, so that's the same that we've had all day today. The graphic got messed up this morning from the Hurricane Center, so just be aware we're still showing the graphic that we had before the 10 o'clock update this morning. So we're still looking at 3 to as high as 7 feet of storm surge wrapped around basically from Intercoastal City all the way over to Burns Point, and all these communities that are along and south of Highway 14 and south of Highway 90 or west of Highway 90. Those are the locations that will be most threatened. We've seen different videos from going down towards Burns Point. I think Reed Timmer was out there, had his video earlier. We've seen some pictures out of Sycamore Point and Intercoastal City as well. So we know the water's out there and it's getting deep. So just be aware of those locations out there. These are some of the tidal stations that we've had recording for us. This is Freshwater Canal in Vermilion Parish on the top, running about 2 feet above normal. The bottom graph is Amaranta Pass in St. Mary Parish, running between 6 to 7 feet above normal. And you notice they're both going into low tide right now. I don't think you're going to see a big drop-off for these tide levels, but you do notice that we'll be going into a high tide later on tonight after midnight, cresting, give or take, 4 o'clock in the morning. So just be aware that of all the worst timing, we're going to still have southerly flow in these areas with high tide coming in at 4 o'clock in the morning. So I wouldn't be surprised if these values go higher than what they are right now. Now, further to the west, both Sabine Pass and Calcasieu Pass, they're running basically near normal with the northerly flow. But at some point tomorrow, the winds are going to shift out of the south, and when that happens, we expect these tides to run above normal. My first guess at it would be 2 feet above normal, so it will probably be the criteria for a coastal flood advisory. Now, depending on how things set up, if it gets deeper than that, we'll have to change it to a coastal flood warning. So that's something that we'll be monitoring later on tonight on the midnight shift to see if we have to upgrade whatever we're going to do for the Jefferson County coastal areas as well as the Cameron Parish coastal areas. So be aware of that scenario for tomorrow. Once again, you notice the high tide for those guys starts at 4 a.m., but really there's kind of a flat high tide, that really continues through midday tomorrow. So once again, the question mark comes into when the winds shift out of the south. If they shift to the south in the morning hours, then we're going to have a window there in the morning where the tides could cause some problems in those areas. Before the low tide that comes in, you see it comes in, give or take, around, it's like 8 o'clock or so at night tomorrow night. So this is the excessive rainfall outlook. The one on the left is for today and tonight, showing basically Acadiana being the focus region, south central Louisiana, And then Sunday night, it stretches further to the west all the way to Lake Charles and Alexandria. This comes back to the uncertainty of tropical forecasting, that these rain bands, you can't nail them down hours and hours in advance as to exactly where they're going to go. So this is our best guess at this stage of the game to say where we expect the heaviest rain bands to be located and where the potential for the flooding rains are going to be located. So the flooded roads and property, that's the stuff that we're looking at in the red and the pink zones on these graphs here. With that, a lot of the river forecasts now are forecasted to go into flood. This is Bayou Vermilion near Eunice going up to a moderate flood stage, 18 foot by Monday into Tuesday, which could be tweaked, obviously, based on actual rainfall that does occur. Down on the Vermilion River, Karen Crow still looks at 19 foot for the crest, and Surrey Street still shows 15 foot for the crest sometime on Sunday for both of those gauges into Monday. And then on the Atchafalaya, Butte LaRose, they're looking at it going to 20 foot. You notice in the graph there, it's already higher than what they were forecasting, so that may have to get bumped up a little bit there as well, maybe to 20 and a half. But at least right now, we're expecting it to get the flood stage in the Butte LaRose region, and it's probably going to be one of those flat crests where it stays up there for much of, at least into the middle part of next week. And then finally, the story down in Morgan City, they updated the crest now to 10.5, which is actually the record crest down there. They're expecting this to get near it or even a little bit above it. So that's something to be monitoring very closely as well tonight. With all the rain that we're forecasting to come into that area, this is a combination of the southerly flow pushing into waters from the bay, as well as the rainfall that's going to be falling across the top of Morgan City itself. Obviously, this isn't just a Morgan City problem. This is going to be a problem from the Stevensville area as well. The tornado threat's been low so far today, so this graphic on the left hasn't verified very well, but obviously in the middle of the night where rain bands develop, we'll have to watch to see if we have any thunderstorms that start rotating that indicate the potential for tornadoes. The biggest focus region would be over in south central Louisiana, and it'll transition gradually up into central Louisiana tomorrow. So the summary sheet here, Barry's still a strong tropical storm, 65-mile-an-hour wind speeds. Life-threatening rainfall of 10 to 15 inches is still expected, locally higher amounts, and the uncertainty involves exactly what parishes are going to see it. Our first guess was Vermilion, Lafayette, Iberia, St. Martin, St. Mary. It may extend a little bit further west than that, and maybe further north than that, depending on where these rain bands develop and strengthen later on tonight. Along the coast, the storm surge values are between 3 and 7 feet, and that's going to continue with these strong southerly flows. So all these points out there, Intercoastal City, Erath, Delcom, Henry, Sycamore Point, Burns Point, will be having flood problems continuing through the overnight hours and into at least the first half of the day on Sunday. And then because of the tropical storm force winds, whereas we're probably not going to see sustained winds in the tropical storm force range very long, the gusts could get up there through the evening hours and overnight hours. So we're looking at scattered and numerous power outages with trees blown down and damage to homes and businesses, especially over in south central and central Louisiana, and somewhat in the portions of southwest Louisiana as well. The threat will be less over in southeast Texas. And then finally, the isolated tornado threat will continue in rain bands in south central and central Louisiana tonight into tomorrow. So that's what I've got here. I'm going to do another conference call tomorrow at 10:30 in the morning, since this will be an ongoing event still tomorrow. But in the meantime, me and Jonathan are available for any of y'all's questions.
All right, well, the good news is it's winding down. We still have to get the center of Barry out of southern Louisiana, so we do expect, as Roger said, some really some gusty winds to continue into the evening hours. The main issue after that is going to be, we think, the bands of heavy rain that may fall. Some of you may have seen the pinwheel effect even prior to Barry moving inland. It was actually stretching across large part of the western Gulf, even touching into Texas. So just be mindful that that type of activity could occur, especially during the day tomorrow, early next week. Get that pinwheel effect stretching south, southwest. That would put us into southwest Louisiana. So somewhere is going to get a lot of rain. That's just something we're going to have to monitor. And really, the only other thing after that is actually the potential for some coastal flooding, especially Cameron Parish, Sabine Pass area. It always happens when these systems, even if we're experiencing more of an offshore type of flow, the winds come around quickly out of the southeast or south and can really bring that water back very quickly. I mean, I think right now we're thinking about 2 feet above normal for the tides. Once the system lifts north and dissipates further, that'll lessen. But we really didn't clear a whole lot of water out with the northerly flow on the onset of Barry. So that's just another thing we'll have to keep in mind. Any questions?
Thanks, Andy. Appreciate you being here every day. We're lucky to have a National Weather Service office in our backyard. Most people are not that lucky to have an expert come down and talk directly to us. I only had one comment, and it's about planning. For those of you who aren't familiar with it, the Atchafalaya River in Morgan City, it's already high. There was some storm surge forecasts that went up and they came down. I saw one of their officials on TV saying they were 100% positive that the water wasn't going to come over the top of that levee. Well, now the storm surge forecast has gone up by a foot. Well, they're pretty close to the top of the levee now. So if you ever wonder why are we, taking the worst case of this, that's why. Because usually the worst case is the worst case you can think of, not the worst thing that can happen. So we want to look at what is the worst thing that can happen. We can always back away from that. So, but again, without the advice of the Weather Service, we wouldn't be able to do any of this. So, Andy, I really appreciate you being here every day. We're going to discontinue we're going to close the EOC at some point tonight. It looks like the eye of the storm is pretty much right south of Lafayette right now. So once that gets by I-10, the wind's going to shift back around to the north. We still have to look out for that rain that Andy's talking about, but it's unknown whether we're going to get that or not. So we will be available through 911. Call the 911 admin number and they can get in touch with us if needed. Other than the request for outside assistance that we talked about earlier, we haven't seen any. And frankly, we've looked all over and talked to different areas. There's not a lot of search and rescue going on. There's power outages and things, but it looks like the damage is probably less unless we get these rains come on tonight and change that story. So again, we'll get the request for assistance. We'll let y'all know about it if we do. Anyone have anything else? We'll probably have a short after action sometime in the next couple of weeks. We'd like to know your thoughts on anything we can do better for you at the EOC. Paul, you got something?
We'll be here tomorrow for the 10:30 briefing.
Okay. Hopefully it'll be over by then, but
Yeah.
Tonight, you got any thoughts on what time?
I'm going to come back in here around 10 o'clock. I'll be here till midnight just to kind of see what the weather's doing. And then we'll be back in again at 6:30.
Okay, thanks.